and you'll be taken right into the program. It will recognize you and log you in automatically. The same is true for your students. If they log into My Plan, click on the typing agent icon, they'll automatically be in the program as them and ready to get started. The only thing you have to spread this news far and wide in the district is that if you're in typing agent, no one should ever try to change their password when they're in the typing agent program, because it will break that link that lets you just log in automatically and not have to do double logins and all that.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Linda. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move forward?
Nope.
All right, perfect. So just a couple requests. If you are in a noisy, everything sounds good now, but if you end up being in a noisy location or somebody comes in to have a conversation with you, if you can just make sure that you mute your microphone so that we're not privy to your conversation. And then, of course, if you do have any questions, there will be a time for a Q&A at the end, but if you have a specific question about what we're looking at that point, don't hesitate to interrupt me and let me know. Okay. So we have, that said, we have a couple different environments. We have our K2 environment, and then we have our 3 through 12 environment. And there's some different even curriculums within the 3 through 12. What we're looking at right now, and can everybody see my screen? Linda, can you see my screen?
Yeah, but now it went to install the Cisco WebEx add-on.
Christine?
I'm seeing the typing agent. Now I'm seeing Debbie Krause's screen for some reason.
Yes, me too.
Hold on, let me see. Something happened. Just make sure that.
Yeah, how did she end up being the host all of a sudden?
All right.
Okay, are we?
I can't. All I see is typing agent Poway USD.
I don't see your screen anymore, Brett. Oh wait, here it comes. I clicked on your name and it came back.
Okay.
Can everybody else see now? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. All right, so what we're going to take a look at first is just an overview of what these various options are on the left-hand side, and then we're going to jump into the class settings themselves. We'll go over some best practices, and then we'll take a look at the student experience. So when you first log in, the first thing that you're going to see is a dashboard. There's going to be more functionality to this dashboard in the future, but at the moment, the main thing that will show up is all the classes that you've set up for a particular day, and indicated within the program is going to be, for example, on Thursday, are going to show up in this dashboard. So especially if you're teaching more than one typing class, that can be pretty useful. And then to get to your class, you're going to be able to click just straight up onto the name. We also have in the dashboard at this point a link to our teacher guide. So if at any point you forget anything that we go over today, you want to delve into any topic in a little bit more detail, or one of your coworkers wasn't able to attend one of these meetings, almost everything that we go over today is also listed in our teacher guides, which can be linked right up from here. A couple of the other links that we have on here, you're not actually going to need to use, because your district has already set everything up for you. So we do have a classes page where you can see all your classes, not just the ones listed on the dashboard. And you can even toggle this view between a tile view if that's more comfortable to you, or a list view if you prefer more of the Excel layout. The next tab that would be useful to you, or page, would be Progress. This is where you're going to run all your reports. This is where you can even print out report cards for typing. And if we have time, or if anybody has questions about reports, we can go into those in a little bit more detail. Below that is Class Setup. So this is where your district has uploaded your classes and your students. So you won't need to use this pretty much at all as a teacher. And then we have our Help section here as well. So you can type in what you're looking for just like you would in Google, or you can take a search around by topic if there's something in particular you want to take a look at. Now let's go ahead and take a look at a specific class. Once you come into your class, the first page that it's going to pop up with is a list of all of your students. So this is your class roster, and it's going to give you a bit of information up front. You're going to have their names, their username. So the username is what they use to log in. It will give you the student password. You'll always be able to see all of the students' passwords. It's the only passwords that are displayed within the program. So for example, typing agent has no idea what your teacher passwords are. It's all encrypted. But you can, we give it to you for the students so that if they forget it, you can help them out quickly and conveniently.
But we don't want to ever do that with our students. They're always going to go through My Plan.
So your students are going through My Plan as well. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. At a glance, you'll also be able to see how much of the curriculum that you've set up they've completed, when they logged in, and you'll be able to see that for all the students here in this demo class, because a lot of these are fake students who we've never used. We're not seeing any information. So somebody who it looks like is not going to meet your target goals by the end of the class is going to show up in red. Somebody who's kind of on the cusp, and I don't have that on here, but it would be in yellow. And then somebody that looks like they're on target for the typing goals for your course is going to show up in green. So that's a really quick kind of visual indicator of where the students are that might guide you to either customize or look into helping a particular student. Some of the other options that we have up here are the ability to customize your class settings. So it's kind of hidden up here, but to the left of your class name, there are 3 vertical buttons. If you click on here, it's going to take us to our class setting, keyboard settings, and Gabe settings. The class settings is where you can set the grade for the class. So this is already going to be preset by your district, and that just determines what the default targets for your students are. We default it to 5 words per minute times the grade level. So for example, a grade 5 class, we would expect by the end of the course, we would hope that on average they're typing 25 words per minute. And those can be customized as well, and I'll show you where to do that in a moment. This is where for your district, you want to make sure this is never checked, because this would allow the student to change their password, something we don't want them to do. And then down here you have an option for, this is where you would get your class to show up on your dashboard by selecting what day that you teach your particular class. So if you have multiple classes, this can be a good way to help keep it organized. Outside of this, some of the other settings that we have available to us when we're actually within the program itself and the student experience while they're typing, you can set it up so that you can block advancement for incorrect letters typed, meaning if they don't type the right letter, they won't be able to continue on in the lesson. That's most useful for our younger typers who are just kind of learning the muscle memory or the pattern recognition of the words and the letters. And then you might find that that's something that you would want to remove for your older students who already have the words and the muscle memory down, because then you can also allow a backspace for those students so they can go back and correct their mistakes. It'll just lower the amount of words that they're typing per minute, because of course it takes them longer. I'm going to skip dynamic curriculum for just a moment. We're going to cover that in its own topic. Some of the other options that are available to you as a teacher are automatic testing. If that's enabled, that will turn on every time a student has completed a unit, that they will have a test on that unit that will automatically pop up that they need to complete before they can move on to the next unit. If that's not selected, they'll be able to complete an assessment, but they won't be forced to take a test before they move on to the next unit. You can also set the particular test time if you're outside of the dynamic curriculum. You can determine if you want students to do the lessons in order. We highly recommend that you do. The reason that it can be disabled is if you have, for example, students that are moving between curriculums, or for any reason you don't want them to start with home row, top row, bottom row when they're typing. You can push them forward further into the program without doing anything in the past. But if it's new students to typing, or they've had the whole summer off from typing, especially for the younger students, we recommend that you just have them start from the beginning every year. You can set it up so that at any particular letters that they're having trouble with in the lessons, this is the practice letters missed, at the end of the lesson when they get their results page, it's going to give them a link where they can then go to a game where they can practice the letters that they were having trouble with. So it's just another way to help reinforce the muscle memory of where their fingers need to go to press the keys right after a lesson where they may have been having trouble with some of the letters. When we get to the point where we're looking at as a student, you're going to see that there's a virtual keyboard that shows them. It will flash on the button that they're pressed, and it will show a hand movement. One of the reasons that we put that in there is to help students, instead of looking down at the physical keyboard, we found that it can help keep their eyes on the screen if they can also see a keyboard on the screen. But for your more advanced students, or the students that you want to challenge from being kind of sight dependent on seeing a keyboard, you can disable it. Another option available is to, and this is another one we highly recommend using, when you're setting targets, and targets are typing goals, which are like words per minute and how accurate they have to be, and there's a 1, 2, and 3 star. One of the settings that you can set is that they have to earn at least 1 star, so they have to meet a minimum threshold on a lesson before they can move on to the next lesson. The main benefit of that is a lot of students are going to try to focus on speed. They'll want to get done fast. And for example, if you don't have block advancement for incorrect letters typed enabled, or they don't have to require a star, you might see that they end up just pressing down an H key to get through the lesson, and they got through it really quick, and their words per minute look really good, but their accuracy could be incredibly low. So requiring students to earn at least 1 star before they move to the next lesson is a great way to help reinforce focusing on accuracy, not on speed, because of course the efficiency and speed will come with their accuracy. Within the lesson itself, there can be essentially micro rewards where after typing 25 characters without an error, they'll get a blue star and a little blue star sound. We recommend leaving that on as well, but if you do have students that get distracted by the noise or by the visual coming on the screen of the little blue star, it can be disabled here, though that is by class. Does anybody have any questions on these before I move on to the game settings?
You're going to talk about enabling dynamic curriculum leader?
I am.
Okay.
Yep. The class game settings, the other aspect of determining what grade that your class is going to be, in addition to defaulting those typing targets, it'll also default a game world. So I'm going to skip down really quick to the game world. You start out at K2 Adventure for your K through 2. You have Adventure, Junior, Adventure, and Agent. They essentially go up in complexity. So you'll see sometimes there's a repeat of the same game, but every game world will have slightly more complex features on it. So we don't recommend generally that you'd want to change what game world is set as the default for that grade level, at least not without some, if your class particularly needs to have some simpler games or more challenging games for the purposes of your course. You can turn games off so that kids can't play games at all.
Hey there, I'm on this webinar. Are you doing this webinar for the typing agent?
Lisa, can you put us on mute, please?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you. All right. One of the things that you can do as well is just disable specific games. So there are some social games such as Battleship where people go into a room and then they need to find somebody else to play with. If you find that that's distracting, for example, or becomes a point of contention, you can always just disable that game while leaving single games on, or you could do the opposite. There's also a way to turn games into a reward system. So grit coins, if anybody remembers, like an old school arcade where you had to put quarters into an arcade machine to be able to play a game, grit coins work pretty much the same way. The way that a student earns grit coins once it's enabled is by completing lessons, and each grit coin is worth 1 minute of gameplay. And you can determine, based on how often they're typing and how much game time you want them to have, how many grit coins that they earn per lesson. We recommend no more than 1 to 3, but you could, if you're going to be using grit coins, but you could put in as many as you'd like. And then the student, when they click on games, it'll show them how many grit coins they have, and it'll ask how many they want to put in. With the game time, once they put in grit coins, they have that amount of time. Even if they say they put in 5 minutes, but they have to log out after 3, the next time they log in, they'll have 2 minutes remaining on a game. Though outside of the social game, any game that they're playing at that point, the progress will not have been saved, so they'll be starting over from the beginning. Any questions about the games?
Is there a way to set it up so that they have to complete a lesson before they can do a game?
Yes, if you do the grit coins, they won't be able to play a game until they've completed at least 1 lesson and earned a grit coin, because they'll have to put in a grit coin to be able to play any games at any point.
Okay. Is Battleship the only partner or play against someone game?
There are a couple other, there's 3 or 4 games where they can play against each other. I don't remember what the list of those games are off the top of my head, but if you would like, I'll compile that list after this call, and then I can email it out to Linda and to email out to the people that need it.
Cool.
All right, let me just make a note of that. Social games. Okay. Any other questions about games before we move on? All right. Some of the other options that we have available under the curriculum are to set up some curriculum. So I'm going to now take just a moment to talk about the dynamic curriculum, which is what we're in. We have 2 curriculums. Classic, which is if you've ever done a typing program, either yourself as a student or probably taught one anytime in the past couple decades. You're using essentially a static curriculum, and however long it takes you to type it is how long that you're within the curriculum. So you'll have students who already have some proficiency with typing finishing in 2 minutes, and students who've never seen a keyboard finishing in 10 minutes. And so you then have to kind of manage that student time. One of the things that we've done to make that a little bit easier for classroom management, but keeping all of the students engaged and challenged at the same time, even though within the same grade level there might be different skill levels, is with the dynamic curriculum, the program will actually adjust how much content the student receives based on their typing proficiency. So for example, every 3 lessons, it's going to take the words per minute average that they've typed, run it through an algorithm, and it will give them more or less words so that they have approximately a minute to a minute and a half worth of typing to do to complete a lesson. So you'll have everybody in the class, whether they can type 60 words per minute or 20 words per minute, completing a lesson within a minute, minute and a half, but still being challenged at their level to improve. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, excellent. One of the ways that you're going to be setting that up if you use a dynamic curriculum, you can also do this with the classic curriculum, is setting up something called mapping. In mapping, you're putting in when you're starting your typing course, when it ends. You're putting in how often during the week, your frequency during the week that you're going to be typing, how many minutes you expect the students to be typing during that course, and then what you expect their average words per minute to be by the end of the course. So for example, this defaults to 25 because this is a 5th grade class. And then it's going to create a map down here, and we can see some of the ones that I've done some demos on have a little bit of information in them. It will show you how many lessons they've done. It'll show you what their average words per minute are for typing. And then this will also, just like under the student tab, show you green, red, or yellow. So it will let you know if by the end of your course, based on the date that you set in here under the end date, it'll tell you whether the program thinks that the student's going to be able to meet your class benchmark. So it's another good visual indicator at a glance on if any students need a bit of assistance, or if you have students on the other end of the spectrum that are just blasting ahead of it and getting bored in the class. You'll probably notice that before the program tells you, but this is another kind of retroactive place that you can take a look. When you first go into your class and set up mapping, it's going to push you through a little wizard where it explains the consequences of each one of the options. So it will go over in some detail for you. Any questions about that before we move on? Okay, I've got quite a bit more that I want to go over, so I'm going to try to zip through a lot of things in about 5 minutes. So anybody who has to leave at the 30-minute mark has a chance to ask questions. So please bear with me.
Can I just second ask a question?
Yes.
So if I don't want to have to set all those parameters, and I've got a lot of other stuff I have to do in my class and don't want to spend that much time with Typing Agent determining those elements, doesn't it default to those specific criteria and allow the student to work through that so that I could just say to the kids, you got to type 10 minutes every night, and I'm going to check your scores on Friday? It does that, doesn't it?
Yeah, if you don't want to think about it, the only thing you're going to have to do is click on mapping and then confirm the defaults.
Every teacher has to do that?
For their particular class, yes. Now that's if you're going to use mapping, which is a requirement of dynamic curriculum. In the classic curriculum, and if we have time, we'll take a quick look at what that looks like. It doesn't require you to use mapping like the dynamic curriculum does. Because the dynamic curriculum is time-based, to know how much time everybody needs to spend in each unit, it needs to know what you're expected, how much typing they're expected to do within your course.
And can we set those at the district level in any way?
At this time, you can't push it down to each individual class, but that's something that we're working on, expanding an entire essential functionality where you can disable or enable different functions for teachers and admins at a district level.
Okay, let us know when that happens. That'd be great. Thanks.
Absolutely, that'll be a big update. Okay, anything else about mapping before I move on?
So to use the dynamic.
Okay. Some of the other things that you can see from here, code. There are some lessons for coding where they can actually see the results. That also is, of course, going to ensure accuracy, because you get one thing wrong in a code and it won't work. So that's something that you can enable for them. And if you do, it's going to pop up a little tile on their view where it shows that there's code lessons that they can go in and do. Please note that doesn't count for time. It doesn't count for lesson or test time on their report, so it'd be like extracurricular activity. As a teacher or as a district or as a school, you can also schedule mandatory tests if your school has them or if your district has them. They can push it down. Anything that you create here, the student within the time frame that you put it in for, if they log into Typing Agent, they're going to have to complete that test before they can move on to their normal curriculum. The last thing you'll see here is a history. So if any changes are made to the curriculum, such as changing it between classic and dynamic curriculum, that's going to be listed here. It's going to show you who did it and when they did it. So you can just keep if you're sharing classes, for example, you'll know who did what. Okay. This targets tab, this is where it's going to have the default targets based on the grade level. 2 stars is where we say kind of the meets expectations. 1 star is you're working towards it. 3 stars that you're exceeding it. So it's going to be plus or minus 5 from the 2-star. Now you can change these for your class. Here, you can also change it per individual student. So if you have students that are kind of outside of the norm on the top or the bottom, you can select the individual student and put in their personalized targets here. So if you do have a student who already knows how to type quite well, we've had 4th graders that can do over 60 words per minute. This would be a way to challenge them without overwhelming the rest of the class within the program. A couple other things that we have available in here are social aspects. So spy mail is kind of like an email program. The teacher can set it up so that they can only send emails to you within the program. You can set it up so that they can send emails to each other, or you can disable it entirely if you don't want to bother with it. If you do set it up so that they can send emails to each other, you'll always have an archive of all the messages they've ever sent, even if they delete it from their view. So it can be a great way to kind of teach about social media responsibility. Same thing with Agent Book, which is kind of like a Facebook where the teacher can post a message and then students can comment on it. They cannot create their own messages, however.
So I assume it defaults without the email activated?
It defaults to allow students to only send messages to the teacher.
Okay.
All right. Next thing we have is gradebook. This is where you can put, based on an accuracy or words per minute, you can indicate what grade that a student is getting, whether you use A through F or you use 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever the case may be. This is totally editable. You can put anything you want in here. And then this can be used in a report or in report cards to make it easier to assess the grade based on their actual work without having to do it manually. And the last thing I wanted to show on here is you can message your class in a way that they can't interact with. So if you have, happy holidays or some sort of note about the day that you want to make sure they get before they start typing, it'll pop up a message when they sign in, and it will require them to interact with it by closing it before they can move on to their lessons. Okay. Any questions about any of this before we take a look at the student view?
Yes. Are the targets preset by grade level?
Yes.
Okay.
So when you
go ahead.
I was going to say, when you come into targets, it's going to look like this based on the grade level. It'll have different numbers in here, and then you could you could change them for the whole class year, individual student through the drop down.
And one of the questions we had, are those targets research-based to be developmentally appropriate or based on anything?
Yes, they are.
They're research-based?
That is correct.
Super. And I want to take a step back before we see the student view, and maybe we'll see it in the student view. What I heard was there is a progression, and some of our teachers will want the question I heard. I want the kids to be able to make sure they're doing these steps before they get to a game or start driving around the system and start exploring. Is there a default we can set at the district level, or in a simple way to tell teachers, if you want to make sure your kids progress through the program appropriately, this is what you do, and you can walk away and grade your essays?
Yes, it is going to default. So if we come and look at some of these settings, even in the classic curriculum, it is going to default to where they must do their lessons in order, and they can't advance without if they type the incorrect letter. So that's some ways that it's going to force them to do the lessons in orders. If you don't want them to play games, then it will just need to be disabled for the class. As far as doing that at a district level, where then teachers could come in and enable it when they're ready.
I'm okay.
That's not there yet.
I'm okay if they play games, as long as they just can't. The teacher's going to ask me, as long as they don't play games all the time, and they've got to do something like you talk about with the coin system. They've got to do something before playing the game.
Correct.
It defaults to that?
It does not. By default, Gritcoins is going to be turned off. It's something that it would need to be enabled.
So if I'm a student, I can just go in and play games and not do the lessons?
If you're otherwise unattended, you could. The teacher is going to be able to either see that or see it on the reports very quickly that you're not progressing forward. The games are also not going to be very, you're not going to be able to progress very far in them if you have not practiced how to type correctly.
If I can just jump in for a second, like I know we're trying to make this as automated as possible. These little tweeting that we do in this setting takes about a few seconds for each class just to make sure, okay, I want my games to be enabled, I need to click here. There's a few important clicks in the setting department just to make sure, do you want the curriculum to be
yeah, I appreciate that. It's just that we have to orient 700 plus teachers to it.
I know, but Linda, you know what we could do is maybe just do step 1, 2, 3. What are the little things that you need to do to set up your class? And I could do that for you, and just you could put that on your help page.
That'd be perfect. The other thing, Brett, before we move on to the student view, were we going to show how to add content curriculum on this page first?
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that. So we're talking doing a custom content?
Right. If they wanted to put a passage in of something they're studying for kids to type or spelling words or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the dynamic curriculum, that's not currently customizable, but the classic curriculum is. So it's a very similar view. This is now a class that's in the classic curriculum. When I go to curriculum, it gives me a choice of which curriculums I want to use. So there's the default. And then if I want to copy using this icon here, one of the curriculums, it's going to put it down here into my custom curriculums. And then I can go through unit by unit and lesson by lesson and either add or change the information that's in here. So if I wanted to, if we're down near the end and something that we're doing in our class, I wanted to make it more relevant to that than say Paul Revere, I could just click on the view, or in this case the edit, and then we'll be able to come through and edit the options.
That, Marie showed us it differently this morning.
Yes, basically what I did, Brett, is I clicked on new curriculum.
Oh, yes.
They have a Spanish song that they want to practice on, so I just clicked on a new curriculum where I can create different lessons. And then, yeah, that's I showed.
Right.
Yep, so if you want to add something completely brand new, absolutely. We come into here under the curriculum, and then anything to add, whether it's students or curriculum, is going to be listed up here. And then we can come down here and input our information for it. So I've created the unit. Now I'm going to create the lessons for the unit, and then I'll be able to input my information. Now we're already going over 30 minutes. Do you want me to go through that in detail, or should we take a look at the student view?
No, we'll have to map that out differently when people want it.
Okay. All right. Let's come into the K through 2 real quick. So the K through 2, the intent was to have a visually engaging interface, something that younger students are going to be a little bit more captivated by, and it includes some tutorials. You have a Yeti here. You probably can't hear the audio on your side, but it's going to read out all of these instructions. When they're ready to move forward, they click Start, and then Igor is going to come up and tell them exactly what they're going to be doing. Now, everything that they're doing through this climb to mountain, whether it's learning how to use the mouse, proper ergonomics, or their home row, they're going to start seeing flags appear here, and the Start will take them through every tutorial as well as the practice lessons for that tutorial. The tutorials are narrative-based, so here we're trying to clean a lab coat, we're cutting pizzas for the lab assistants, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where it's a lot more interactive, where Igor is going to be telling them exactly what they're expected to do, how to reach for example, the from F to the T or F to the G. And then the practice lessons that will also have them do will then just reinforce that in a more static environment, as opposed to having the narration driven. So this is what we're going to see as a K through 2 environment. If I come back to as the teacher, I come back to my classes, and I'm going to look at my 3 through 12. When I go into this class, it's going to be a little bit more streamlined. So as a teacher, I can go in and see exactly what my students see, either as the student or if I'm created as my own student. When I log in, I get a few different more options. Here's where I could go to play games. Here's where I could interact with the social applications if they're enabled. I could see my own time reports or what I've actually been working on. I can free edit some documents that will also assess my words per minute. So if you want to have them do free writing lessons but still know what their words per minute accuracy is, you can use this. And then here's the kind of the bread and butter is going to be the unit lessons. It's going to start off like all of the lessons, whether it's for the entire K through 8 with home row, top row, bottom row, and then it'll start adding on punctuation, capitalization, sentence structure, etc. And when you come in, you'll have an option to see, in this case, must complete the previous lesson is enabled. This key skills is the only lesson that can be skipped, and that's the one where it's key skills for proper ergonomics. So that's something you can have your students go through. Otherwise, they can jump into learning home row with FJDK. And what the lessons look like for them is this. So as they're typing, they're going to see what they're doing on the keyboard. They're going to be getting an accuracy, words per minute, how long they've been typing. And if they get something wrong, it's going to show up in red. And unless you've disabled it, they'll have to type the correct letter before they can move on, which is great for new typers to reinforce that accuracy.
Does it show them earlier for beginners, how to rest my fingers on the home row?
As part of the key lesson, for the K through 2, it does. Let me take a quick check here for the older kids. It is going to show the proper position. It's going to go through. It's not going to specifically say. However, when they come into a new one, this demo, I'm in a student who's already done some work. There will be let me see if I can get it to come up. Let's try a new student. There will be some instructions that come up that show them where they need to go. Let's try it with a new student, and we'll see if I can show you. Test 3.
Yeah, this is the screen we saw today with the new student. It asked, are you a new student or a skilled student, and then went right to that list.
Yeah, this should be coming up with as a new student. Of course, in a demo, sometimes a live demo is always fun because something might not happen as you expect. There's the star reward. There is and I'll double check on my demo to see why it's not coming up and make sure it's nothing that's going to impact your new classes. But there will be they can X out of it, but there'll be instructions, and it will show them how to place their fingers.
Yes, it must be something with the demo, Brett, because this morning I logged in as a 3 to 6, and I could see, like, have to press let's say you're doing FJ, you're going to see the index pointing on the F, and then you have to put the J and then the space bar, and then you can start the lesson. So
exactly. Yeah. All right, great questions. Any other questions at this point?
So this is a district level question. I thought we defaulted to the dynamic curriculum. We had that conversation, but right now, as our teachers are coming on, are they seeing the standard of the dynamic curriculum?
Let me take a look. I'm just going to take a moment and log in as a district admin in Poway, and we'll see what we have listed there.
Okay, it's a comprehensive program. We knew that. I like Marie's idea of a 1, 2, 3 starter guide, because this is going to overwhelm some teachers.
Absolutely. And that's, and Marie, if you want any assistance with that, I'd be happy to help out too. I'll have some time tomorrow. And we can then just customize it for exactly how your district wants to have it set up. And I look at your classes. So I'm doing this off screen just because I'm looking at kind of a back-end interface. Don't want to confuse the situation. And I'm showing, at least the first class I took a look at is in classic curriculum. So because, and I think I see what, I expect I know what the issue is, and we'll add this to the steps of what to do. Because we're just about ready to take our dynamic curriculum out of beta. We've been betaing it for a year just to make sure that everything worked correctly and, you know, live with our teachers. So it's not the default setting to be able to set up a class. When you're uploading everything via a file, it doesn't give you the option to default it to dynamic. So it's one of those steps that a teacher is going to have to click dynamic, put in the mapping, and then move, or at least okay the defaults, and then move forward with the class.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions I can answer at this point, or anything that you'd like me to, for those that can spend the time, delve into a little bit deeper?
Go ahead.
The Classic, when we talked before, Classic also tends to move them to some degree as well, right? I mean, it adapts to them.
So the Classic is just like you have, you know, back in the day when I learned how to type, I had a book or a pamphlet I was typing from in a typewriter.
Right.
It did not adapt to me. I had to type the curriculum on that page, flip the book page over, and continue typing until I was done. So the Classic is not going to, unless the only way that it's dynamic, or you could say that it moves towards the student, is if the teacher customizes the content for them. Otherwise, it is static content that they'll then be typing through, just like if they were typing off of a book.
So
But it moves them up, right? If I do well and I pass the level, it still moves my levels, correct?
So if you've done well, you'll go through, you know, you'll be going through each lesson in a unit automatically, but it's not going to adjust your targets or the type of content that you get based on your skill like the dynamic curriculum would.
So if we have students at our site, we've been using another program that's been a trial program, and like in my 4th grade class, I have students at all sorts of different levels. I would want the dynamic because those kids that are getting fast are going to get bored really quickly with the Classic curriculum.
Exactly.
Right?
Okay. Yes.
All right, so Linda's going to go out and touch every computer and move them to dynamic. It's too bad we can't default to dynamic. I thought we had agreed to that.
Yeah, that's something that as a program we're moving into this year as we take it out of beta and make it the default. We're just not there yet by the time you started.
Yeah, so is it fairly easy for a teacher to be able to change it to dynamic?
Yes, essentially they come into this settings here, keyboard settings, and then they toggle this button right here. And then they do have to set up the mapping, which it's conveniently linked from here. But that should take them no more, especially if they're just okaying the defaults, that should take them no more than, once they get to this step, this will only take them 10, 15 seconds.
All right. In that 1, 2, 3, we may want to do that because it sounds like Sylvie, but the point is well taken that we really wanted it to be more algorithmic driven to result in individualized work.
Right.
Linda, I've done this before. If you need my help and we can just switch all the class, I'm raising my hand to help you.
Well, can we get in and switch it at the district level, class by class?
Yes.
Because I have staff who might be able to do that.
That's a lot of logging in.
Well, we could do it if we had.
You want to do it for 700 teachers?
We could bring in some hourly employees. It would take them a day. Honestly, we could show them how to do it.
If you just give people the directions, this is not that tough.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I was going to do a little 1, 2, 3. Like log in, click on the 3 little dots, set this dynamic, go into your mapping, make sure you enable or disable the game.
We want to train them how to do it.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we want to teach teachers to fish.
Then we're going to go check and see if they did.
They're good. They can do it.
I have faith in you, teachers.
Then we all won't. We're going to go back and fix it.
All right, thank you. I'm out. I'm going to go switch mine to dynamic right now. Have a good afternoon, you guys.
We love
You too. Bye, Sylvie.
Thank
you.
Anything else here?
No, I think we're good. I think we need to play, and we may have questions later.
Okay.
Yes.
And if it,
Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, if anything does come up, the teachers can always click the question mark to ask us any off-the-cuff questions that they have. That'll come straight to the typing agent support team, or the teacher's guide is a great reference, or the help page can answer most questions as well.
And we're putting a page